Welcome back to Blender Cheat Sheets. This is a follow-on tutorial from the beginning of this short series so that I can share with the community this new add-on that is released to the Blender community and also to newbies free of charge, GPL version 2. If you want to find this add-on, please feel free to visit my handle on GitHub and look for Dead Dog Down, and there's a couple of add-ons that'll help make your workload a little bit more efficient. So by now you've already got the add-on installed and you know how to open up the end panel. And in this specific tutorial we're going to be going over the 3D cursor functionality. So let's just get this lined up and let's take a look and see what 3D cursor functionality can give you. First thing at the top is, as usual, on certain sections you'll always find that there is a specific indicator to show whether you've got something selected or not. So if you look up here, you click on something, it'll give you a visual cue that you've got something selected. You can't affect anything in Blender unless you've got something selected. So this is a very good reminder for the newbies. Another is, just below this, I've included Show 3D Cursor. Now you can see that toggling off and on here. And this is useful when you want to preview the scene without any clutter. So for instance, if I have to go back to Viewport, turn off all my grids, then go to 3D Cursor and turn that off as well. Let me do that. Now I've got an uncluttered viewport, so that I can view the overall setup of my scene. That'll be useful on certain occasions when you just want to preview, but without having to render. The next button, simple enough, but you can get to it either by going Shift S, or you can dive into this button-centric setup over here. The first one is reset cursor to world origin. Now this is pretty vital. People don't always know what world origin is, or global origin. It's very important for you to understand this as a newbie. So let me move my cursor away. Now remember, we're working with the 3D cursor right now. This is all 3D cursor centric things that you can do. This is why each section is specifically focused on one of the 3D language motifs that we use to create our 3D world. If I move my cursor away, a simple way to do that is to hold the Shift key and right click anywhere in the scene. Now this is useful in your advanced modeling, but generally if you're doing an individual object, an individual model, you're going to want to keep your 3D cursor snapping back to the world origin once in a while, because your object's center of mass is sitting at that world origin as well, which means if you want to do a clean mirror operation, you want your 3D cursor right there smack bang in the middle of the object, which happens to also be at the middle of the world origin. So this button is very simple. You just click it and your 3D cursor will snap back no matter where you have placed it in your scene. Pretty self-explanatory, but now you don't have to try to think too much, especially for newbies. Just get used to the layout of explicit buttons, and with time you won't be needing cheat sheets anymore, because all of this will become second nature. But this is a lot flatter, a lot more friendly to read. We don't really read in circles. So for newbies, this also sometimes spins you because you can't really see the context of what it's saying. So if you stick with this for now, you'll find that you can memorize it a lot quicker, and you'll also notice that the shortcut is also highlighted for you when you want to dive into this a little bit more. Now, let's move on to the inverse pairs. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So this inverse pair motif has been implemented into Blender cheat sheets so that you can see what is the undo redo path for a specific function. 3D cursor to object origin. Alright, so let's say I put my, I'm going to have to do this in another way. Let me just move this slightly off center. Now, if I click 3D cursor to object origin, what is going to happen? Let's say, for instance, I've got my 3D cursor over there. If I click this button, will the cursor go back to world origin, or is it going to do something else? Well, let's have a look. I'll let you answer that first, and in 3 seconds, I will answer it. 3, 2, 1. Okay, if I click on it, it's going to go to the center of the object. Now, I've done a little bit of a mistake here. I need to show all object origins so you can see that a bit more clearly. Do you see that tiny little dot that's there in the middle? Normally this is turned on by default when you run cheat sheets for the first time. Only if you turn this off, you'll have to come back and turn it back on again. So let's just leave it on so you can see clearly what I am referring to. If you see that little dot in the middle of an object, that dot represents the object origin, not the global origin, not the 3D cursor, the center of that specific object. So if I rotate around, I'll just move this away. If you look carefully, you can see that dot stays pretty much in the middle of that box, no matter which way you look at it. Now that central dot is called the object origin. Object origin. It's quite a bit of a mouthful because later on you're going to find object mode section, which is definitely not the same thing. So 3D cursor to object origin is, I want to get my 3D cursor to the middle of my object's geometry. Let me select first. Bing. Okay. Now, object origin to 3D cursor. This comes in to play when you want to do something a little bit more advanced. Like let's say, for instance, I want to rotate this object, but I don't want to rotate it around itself. I want to rotate it around that point over there. So how do I do that? Well, let's see what happens. It's still rotating around itself. Why? Because the object is rotating around its object origin. So I can now move the object origin to the 3D cursor to give it an offset. I click that, and now what do you think will happen when I press R for rotate and then move the mouse? I'll let you answer that first, and then I'll do it. 3, 2, 1. Here it goes. Press R. Now move my mouse. And aha! I'm now rotating around the object's origin that's been moved to the position of the 3D cursor. Yes, I know that's a mouthful, but you've got to get with the language somehow. This is why it's so important to put these into little daily practices so that you can develop this as your 3D language. Let's go on to the next one. 3D cursor to object. Let's see what happens if I leave everything exactly like it is and then hit 3D cursor to object. Now, do you notice that the object origin is left behind? Because object origin refers to that central pivot point that can be offset, but the object itself is the object that you're working with. This is where there's a couple of added functionalities in this. In Blender, you've got 9 options related to the 3D cursor. I've written in an extra 2, which can add a bit of much needed functionality. So you're going to have to figure out how to use that for yourself and see if it has any value for you. So let's do another example. We're going to go object to 3D cursor. We're just going to offset this a little bit. So move that there. And let's say we're going to put the 3D cursor over there. What do you think will happen when I clicked object to 3D cursor? Is the origin going to move to the 3D cursor, or is the object itself going to move to the 3D cursor? And will that relationship be preserved? I'll let you answer that first. In 3, 2, 1. Here goes, object to 3D cursor. Very interesting. Now, I've deliberately designed it like this because it preserves wherever the origin was lost. This is going to be useful for a little bit more of advanced modeling or advanced 3D creation, where you don't want to move your object origin because you know it's in a very important place, but you want to move the object itself. Now we're going to move on to the next button. Okay, the next one, just to get to this quite simply, let's go into edit mode. You'll see I've marked where it is applicable. If we tab in or go into edit mode up here, we're now going to test how do I get my 3D cursor to snap to a specific vertex. So I know that I'm in vertex mode. I click on a specific vertex, and by now you can pretty much see that if I click 3D cursor to vertex, that 3D cursor is going to snap smack bang, precisely, accurately, perfectly to the position of that 3D vertex. If I want to now, I'm going to try this, put the cursor somewhere else and then click on vertex to 3D cursor, what do you think should happen? Let's see. In 3, 2, 1, I'm going to click vertex to 3D cursor. Now this is interesting because now I can use my 3D cursor to manipulate these vertices as well, besides just using G and S and R. The next is edge, 3D cursor to edge. So if I now go into edge mode, I select an edge and then I click 3D cursor to edge. By now you can already see that what is going to happen is my 3D cursor is going to snap to the middle of that edge. And also if I now offset my cursor somewhere else and I click its inverse pair, edge to 3D cursor. Interesting stuff. Now we start to see, I've got some functionality I can use here to help me model a little bit more efficiently. The last one in this short tutorial is going to be, we're going to go into face mode up here. We're going to select a face, and again, very simple examples. The language is very simple, but once you start piling on all of these concepts and these motifs, it starts to spin you a little bit. So make sure that if you're working through this 3D cursor section, that you're putting to practice little examples that you can do for yourself. If we go to the last two buttons in this tutorial, 3D cursor to face, by now you already know what will happen. That 3D cursor is going to snap to the middle of that face. That's useful for when you want to, let's say for instance, I want to add, let me see, I can either add a box onto this box while in edit mode, or I can now tab out, add a box so it's not tied to that object, scale it down, grab it along Z, and my new object will spawn at that 3D cursor. This is why that 3D cursor position is quite useful. Let's do this one more time, just so that you can see what I'm talking about. I select this face, I go 3D cursor to face, I tab out. Remember, I've encouraged you that you're going to have to learn how to tab in and out of modes very quickly, very smoothly. By doing things in the wrong sequence, you're going to get yourself a little bit stuck and you're going to wonder why you can't complete a tutorial. But in this specific example right now, I'm going to do this another way. This object we added by tabbing back into object mode first. This next one, we're going to stay in edit mode of this specific object and see what happens. So let's go cube, scale it down, grab it along X. Now what is interesting here is that If I tab out, technically those two objects are the same thing, whereas this object is separate. Can you tell me why? I'll let you answer that for yourself, and then in 5 seconds I will give you my explanation of it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When we are in edit mode, any other objects that we add to it become part of that mesh that we are editing. If we tab out from that mode, then we're adding separate objects to that scene that aren't part of the mesh that we are editing. I know that's a mouthful, but these are the things that we have to live with developing the 3D language and to be fluent with it. So let me undo. Okay, and then I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and I'm going to now put the 3D cursor up here somewhere, and we're going to click our last button, face to 3D cursor. Do you think the face will be still horizontal relative to that 3D cursor? Will it twist up? Will it tilt? I'll let you first answer that, and then I'm going to tap this in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's tap face to 3D cursor and see what happens. Aha! So the orientation stays true to what it originally was, just that the center of that face will snap to the middle or to that 3D cursor that you've positioned somewhere in the scene. Right, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. This has been a very short one again. In the next tutorial, we are going to be looking into world origin and all the world origin centric functions that are important for you to know to help you develop your 3D language. Please put all of these little buttons to the test and run them through, make sure that they make sense for you, and follow me up in the next tutorial so that you've got a very good idea of what Blender cheat sheets can do for you. Please remember that once you have been using Blender cheat sheets for maybe about a year or two, first thing is that you're going to be into your modeling zone a lot faster. But secondly, Blender cheat sheets, you're going to be phasing it out eventually because you'll be familiar with the user interface and where everything is. Just that while you're a newbie, you don't want the cognitive overload of trying to remember shortcut position, this menu, that menu, shortcut key, da 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 da. That's an incredible cognitive load that just robs you of focusing on what you want to do. What are you here to do? You're here to model something. You're not here to menu hunt. You're not here to remember shortcuts. You're not here to remember XYZ 1, 2, 3, B, T, whatever. You're here to model. So this is why Blender Cheat Sheets is trying to fill the gaps specifically with the newbies, give you something usable so that you can see the explicit button right in front of you and you can focus on your workload, which is what am I modeling? And to get your satisfaction out of modeling. This is why we're all here. We want to see the creative result. We don't want to spend time debugging, thinking what was that shortcut, read a cheat sheet in a PDF or in a notepad or something that we scribble down. We want to keep our eyes here. And this is the aim of Blender cheat sheets. It's to keep your eyes on your modeling. And that for me is just absolutely golden. Please don't forget to support Blender. They've done a fantastic job in keeping this GPL version 2. Blender cheat sheets is free for life, GPL version 2 as well. You can go and visit github.com, look up my handle, Dead Dog Down, and you will find all of my add-ons, GPL version 2 for life, and that is my promise for you, and I don't break my promises. Have an awesome day, and see you in the next tutorial.